His message. Message for all. Buddha, the flower of mankind, is no more in this world in the physical form, but the sweet fragrance of his message of peace remains forever. Buddhism is one of the oldest religions still being practiced in the world today. While the names of many other religions which existed in India have been forgotten, the teachings of the Buddha, better known as the Dharma, are still relevant to the needs of today's society. This is because the Buddha always considered himself as a human religious teacher, whose message was meant to promote freedom, happiness, and well-being of others. The Buddha's primary concern was to help his followers to live a normal life, without going to the extremes of either self-denial or totally surrendering to sensual desires. The practical nature of the Buddha's teaching is revealed in the fact that not everyone is expected to attain exactly the same goal in one lifetime, since the mental impurities are rooted differently in individuals. Some people are spiritually more advanced than others, and they can proceed to greater heights according to their state of development. But every single human being has the ultimate potential to attain the supreme goal of Buddhahood if he or she has the determination and will to do so. Even now does the soothing, sweet voice of the Buddha ring in our ears. And sometimes we perhaps feel a little ashamed because we do not understand him fully. Often we only praise his teaching and respect him, but do not try to practice what he preached. The Buddha's teaching and message have had their effect on all people for thousands of years, whether they believe in any religion or not. His message is for all. Though the Buddha, the flower of mankind, is no longer in this world, the sweet fragrance and exquisite aroma of his teachings have spread far and wide. Its balmy, diffusing fragrance has calmed and soothed millions. Its ambrosial perfume has heartened and cheered every nation which it has penetrated. The reason that his teachings have captured millions of hearts is because they were introduced not by weapons or political power, but by love and compassion for humanity. Not a drop of blood stains its pure path. Buddhism wins by the warm touch of love, not by the cold claws of fear. Fear of the supernatural and the doctrine of everlasting hellfire have no place in Buddhism. During the last 25 centuries since the appearance of the Buddha, many changes have taken place in this world. Kingdoms have risen and fallen. Nations have prospered and perished. And the world today has forgotten many of these past civilizations. But the name of the Buddha remains alive and fresh in the minds of millions of people today. The kingdom of righteousness that he built is still strong and steady. Although many temples, pagodas, images, libraries and other religious symbols erected in his honor were destroyed by religious fanatics from time to time, his untainted noble name and the message he gave remain in the minds of understanding people. The Buddha taught that the greatest of conquests was not the subjugation of others but of the self. He taught in the Dhammapada, even though a man conquers 10,000 men in battle, he who conquers but himself is the greatest of conquerors. Perhaps the best example of how the gentle message of the compassionate one could rehabilitate the most savage of men is the case of the Emperor Asoka. About 200 years after the Buddha, this king waged fierce battles across India and caused great anguish and fear. But when he embraced the Dharma, he regretted the evil that he had done. We remember and honor him today because after his conversion to the path of peace, he embarked on another battle, a battle to bring peace to humanity. He proved without doubt that the Buddha was right when he asserted that true greatness springs from love, not hatred, from humility, not pride, from compassion, not cruelty. The Emperor Asoka's conversion from cruelty to kindness was so complete that he forbade even the killing of animals in his kingdom. He realized that his subjects stole because of want, and he set out to reduce want in his kingdom. But above all, he instructed the followers of the Buddha to remember the master's teaching never to force their beliefs on others who were loyal to other religious leaders. In other cases, we have heard of kings who, upon conversion, diverted their thirst for blood by spreading their new religion by the sword. Only Buddhism can take pride in a king who has never been equaled in such greatness before or ever since. The Buddha's teachings were introduced in order that societies could be cultured and civilized and live in peace and harmony. All of life's most difficult problems can be better understood if we but try to learn and practice his teachings. The Buddha's approach to the problems and suffering of mankind is straightforward and direct. The Buddha was the greatest conqueror the world has ever seen. He conquered the world with his infallible weapons of love and truth. His teaching illuminates the way for mankind to cross from a world of darkness, hatred, and suffering, to a new world of light, love, and happiness. Miraculous power. If a wicked man can become a pure, religious man, this is a real miracle in action. In every religion we know of miracles being performed by either the founders of these religions or by some of their disciples. In the case of the Buddha, miracles occurred from the day of his birth until his passing away into nirvana. Many of the psychic powers of the Buddha were attained through his long and intense training in meditation. The Buddha meditated and passed through all the highest stages of contemplation that culminated in pure self-possession and wisdom. Such attainments through meditation are considered nothing miraculous, but fall within the psychic power of any trained ascetic. Using meditation on the night of his enlightenment, there arose within the Buddha a vision of his previous births, the many existences with all their details. He remembered his previous births and how he had made use of these births to gain his enlightenment. Then the Buddha had a second and wider vision in which he saw the whole universe as a system of karma and rebirth. He saw the universe made up of beings that were noble and wicked, happy and unhappy. He saw them all continually passing away according to their good and bad deeds, leaving one form of existence and taking shape in another. Finally, he understood the nature of suffering, the cessation of suffering and the path that leads to the cessation of suffering. Then a third vision arose within the Buddha. He realized that he was completely free from all bondages, human or divine. He realized that he had done what had to be done. He realized he had no more rebirth to go through, because he had eradicated all craving and he was living with his final body. This knowledge destroyed all ignorance, all darkness, and light arose within him. Such is the psychic power and the wisdom that arose within the Buddha. As he sat meditating under the Bodhi tree, the Buddha had a natural birth, he lived in a normal way. But he was an extraordinary man. As far as his enlightenment was concerned, those who have not learned to appreciate his supreme wisdom try to explain his greatness by peeping into his life and looking for miracles. However, the Buddha's supreme enlightenment is more than enough for us to understand his greatness. There is no need to show his greatness by introducing miraculous powers. Miracles have little relation to seeing things as they are. The Buddha knew of the power that could be developed by training the human mind. He also knew that his disciples could acquire such powers through mental development. Thus the Buddha advised them not to exercise such psychic power in order to convert less intelligent people. He was referring to the miraculous power to walk on water, to exorcise spirits, raise the dead and perform the so-called supernormal practices. He was also referring to the miracles of prophecy, such as thought reading, soothsaying, fortune-telling, and so on. When the uneducated believers see the performance of such powers, their faith deepens. But the nominal converts, who are attracted to a religion because of these powers embrace a faith. Not because they realize the truth, but because they harbor hallucinations. Besides, some people may pass remarks that these miracles are due to certain charms or tricks. In drawing people to listen to the Dharma, the Buddha appealed to their reasoning power. The following story illustrates the Buddha's attitude towards miraculous powers. One day the Buddha met an ascetic who sat by the bank of a river. This ascetic had practiced austerities for 25 years. The Buddha asked him what he had attained for all his labor. The ascetic proudly replied that, now at last, he could cross the river by walking on the water. The Buddha pointed out that this gain was insignificant compared to all the years of labor. Since anyone could cross the river using a ferry for 1 penny. In certain religions, a man's miraculous performance can help him to be declared a saint. But in Buddhism, miracles can be a hindrance for a person to attain sainthood, which is a gradual personal attainment and individual concern resulting in completely eradicating defilements from the mind. Each person himself must work for his sainthood through self-purification, and no one else can make another person a saint. The Buddha says that a person can gain miraculous power without developing spiritual power. He teaches us that if we first gain spiritual power, then we automatically receive the miraculous or psychic powers too. But if we develop miraculous powers without spiritual development, then we are in danger. We can misuse this power for worldly gain, patalagama yudana. There are many who have deviated from the right path by using their miraculous powers without having any spiritual development. Many people who are supposed to have obtained some miraculous powers succumbed to the vainglory of obtaining some worldly gain. Even worse, people with miraculous powers but without spiritual development can be deluded into thinking that they have divine power. Many so-called miracles talked about by people are merely imaginations and hallucinations created by their own minds due to a lack of understanding of things as they truly are. All these miracles remain as miracles only for as long as people fail to know what these powers really are. The Buddha also expressly forbade his disciples to use miracles to prove the superiority of his teachings. On one occasion, he said that the use of miracles to gain converts was like using dancing girls to tempt people to believe something. Anyone with the proper mental training can perform miracles, because these are simply an expression of the superiority of mind over matter. According to the Buddha, the miracle of realization of the truth is the only miracle. When a murderer, thief, terrorist, drunkard, or adulterer is made to realize that what he had been doing is wrong and gives up his bad, immoral and harmful way of life, this change can be regarded as a miracle. The change for the better arising from an understanding of Dharma universal law, or natural occurrences is the highest miracle that any person can perform. The Buddha's silence. When the questioner was unable to understand the real meaning of the answer or when the questions posed to him were wrong, the Buddha remained silent. The scriptures mention a few occasions when the Buddha remained silent to metaphysical and speculative questions posed to him. Some scholars, owing to their misunderstanding of the Buddha's silence, came to the wrong conclusion that the Buddha was unable to answer these questions. When the Buddha knew that the questioner was not in a position to understand the answer because of its profundity, or if the questions themselves were wrongly put in the first place, the Blessed One remained silent. Some of the questions to which the Buddha remained silent are: 1. Is the universe eternal? 2. Is it not eternal? 3. Is the universe finite? 4. Is it infinite? 5. Is soul the same as the body? 6. Is the soul one thing and the body another? 7. Does the Tathagata exist after death? 8. Does he not exist after death? 9. Does he both, at the same time, exist and not exist after death? 10. Does he both, at the same time, neither exist nor not exist? The Buddha, who had truly realized the nature of these issues, observed noble silence. An ordinary person who is still unenlightened might have a lot to say, but all would be sheer conjecture based on his or her imagination. The Buddha's silence on these issues is more significant than attempting to deliver thousands of discourses on them. The paucity of our human vocabulary, which is built upon relative experiences, cannot hope to convey the depth and dimensions of reality, which a person has not experienced through insight. On several occasions, the Buddha had very patiently explained that human language is too limited, and cannot describe the ultimate truth. If the ultimate truth is absolute, then it does not have any point of reference for worldlings with only mundane experiences and relative understanding to fully comprehend it. When they try to do so with their limited mental capacities, they misunderstand the truth, like the 7 blind men and the elephant. A listener who has not realized the truth cannot fathom the explanation given. Just like a man who was blind since birth will have no way of visualizing the color of the sky. The Buddha did not attempt to give answers to all the questions put to him. He was under no obligation to respond to meaningless questions, which reflected gross misunderstanding on the part of the questioner, and which in any case had no relevance to one's spiritual development. He was a practical teacher, full of compassion and wisdom. He always spoke to people fully understanding their temperament, capability and capacity to comprehend. When a person asked questions not with the intention to learn how to lead a religious life, but simply to create an opportunity for splitting hairs, the Blessed One did not answer these questions. Questions were answered to help a person towards self-realization, not as a way of showing his towering wisdom. How to answer questions? According to the Buddha, there are several ways of answering various types of questions. The first type of question is one that requires a definite answer, such as a yes or no. For example, the question, "Are all conditioned things impermanent?" is answered with a yes. The second type of question is one requiring an analytical answer. Suppose someone says that Angulimala was a murderer before he became an arahant. And is it possible for any murderer to become an arahant? This question should be analyzed before you can say yes or no. Otherwise, it will not be answered correctly and comprehensively. You would need to analyze what conditions make it possible for a murderer to become a saint within one lifetime. The third type of question is one where it is necessary to ask a counter question to help the questioner to think the problem through. If you ask, "Why is it wrong to kill other living beings?" the counter question is, "How does it feel when others try to kill you?" The fourth kind of question is one that should be dropped. It means that you should not answer it. These are the questions which are speculative in nature, and any answer to such questions will only create more confusion. An example of such a question is, "Does the universe have a beginning or not?" People can discuss such questions for years without coming to a conclusion. They can only answer such questions based on their imagination, not on real understanding. Some answers which the Buddha gave have close parallels to the kind of responses found in nuclear science. According to Robert Oppenheimer, if we ask, for instance, whether the position of the electron remains the same, we must say no. If we ask whether the electron is at rest, we must say no. If we ask whether it is in motion, we must say no. The Buddha has given such answers when interrogated as to the conditions of a man's self after his death. But they are not familiar answers in accordance with the tradition of 17th and 18th century science. It is important to note, however, that the Buddha did give answers to some of these questions to his most intellectually developed disciples after the questioner had left. And in many cases, his explanations are contained in other discourses, which show us why these questions were not answered by the Buddha merely to satisfy the inquisitive but undeveloped minds of the questioners. The Buddha's attitude towards worldly knowledge. Worldly knowledge can never help one to lead a pure religious life that leads to peace and emancipation. Worldly knowledge is useful for worldly ends. With such knowledge, mankind learns how to use the earth's resources to improve the standard of living, grow more food, generate power to run factories and to light up streets and houses, manage factories and businesses, cure sickness, build flats and bridges, cook exotic dishes, and so on. Worldly knowledge can also be used for harmful purposes, such as building missiles with nuclear warheads, manipulating the stock market, cheating legally, and inflaming political anxiety and hatred. Despite the rapid expansion of worldly knowledge, especially in the 21st century, mankind has been brought no nearer to the solution to human problems and eradicating pervasive unsatisfactoriness. In all likelihood, it never will solve human beings' universal problems and bring peace and happiness because of the premises on which such knowledge, discoveries and inventions are built. While Buddhism can bring greater understanding on how to lead a good worldly life, its main focus is how to gain liberation through the development of wisdom, mental culture and purity. For ordinary human beings, there is no end to the search for worldly knowledge, which in the final analysis does not really matter. For as long as we are ignorant about the Dharma, we will forever be trapped in samsara, the repeated cycle of birth and death. According to the Buddha, for a long time, brothers, have you suffered the death of a mother. For a long time, the death of a father, for a long time, the death of a son, for a long time, the death of a daughter, for a long time, the death of brothers and sisters. For a long time have you undergone the loss of your goods. For a long time have you been afflicted with disease. And because you have experienced the death of a mother, the death of a father, the death of a son, the death of a daughter, the death of brothers and sisters, the loss of goods, the pangs of disease, company of the undesired, you have truly shed more tears upon this long way hastening from birth to death, from death to birth, than all the waters that are held in the four great seas. Anguttara Nikaya. Here the Buddha was describing the suffering of continuous births and deaths in the world. He wanted to show people the way out of all these sufferings. Why did the Buddha speak in this manner to his disciples? And why did he not make an attempt to solve the problems as to whether the world is eternal or not, whether it is finite or not? Such problems might be exciting and stimulating to those who have the curiosity, but in no way would the answers to these problems help a person to overcome suffering. That is why he ignored questions like these, because they were futile and the knowledge about such things would not contribute to one's spiritual well-being. The Buddha knew that to speak on things which were of no practical value and beyond the power of comprehension was a waste of time and energy. He foresaw that to advance hypotheses about such things only served to divert thoughts from their proper channel and hinder spiritual development. Worldly knowledge and scientific research should be complemented and balanced with religious and spiritual values. Otherwise such worldly knowledge does not in any way contribute to one's progress in leading a pure, religious life. Human beings have come to the stage where their minds fed by the instruments and fruits of technological advancements have become obsessed with egoism, craving for power, and greed for material wealth. Without religious values, worldly knowledge and technological advancement can lead to their downfall and destruction. These will only inflame their greed, which will take on new and terrifying dimensions. On the other hand, when worldly knowledge is harnessed for moral ends, it can bring maximum benefit and happiness for humanity. The last message of the Buddha: when I am gone, my teaching shall be your master to guide you. 3 months before his passing away, the Buddha addressed his disciples and said, I have delivered sermons to you during these 45 years. You must learn them well and treasure them. You must practice them and teach them to others. This will be of great use for the welfare of those living now, and for the welfare of those who come after you. My years are now full ripe, the lifespan left is short. I will soon attain parinirvana. You must be earnest. O monks, be mindful and of pure virtue. Whoever untiringly pursues the teaching will go beyond the cycle of birth and death and will make an end of suffering. When Ananda asked the Buddha what would become of the order after he passed away, the Buddha replied, What does the order expect of me, Ananda? I have preached the truth without any distinction, for in regard to the truth, there is no clenched fist in the teachings of the Buddha. It may be, Ananda, that to some among you, the thought will come the Master's words will soon end. Soon we will no longer have a Master. But do not think like this, Ananda. When I am gone, my teaching and the disciplinary code shall be your Master. The Buddha further explained, If there is anyone who thinks, it is I who will lead the brotherhood, or the order is dependent on me, it is I who should give instructions. The Buddha does not think that he should lead the order or that the order is dependent on him. I have reached the end of my days. Just as a worn-out cart can only be made to move with much additional care, so my body can be kept going only with much additional care. Therefore, Ananda, be a lamp and refuge unto yourselves. Look for no other refuge. Let the truth be your lamp and your refuge. Seek no refuge elsewhere. At the age of 80, on his birthday, he passed away without displaying any supernatural powers. He showed the real nature of component things even in his own life. When the Buddha passed away into nirvana, one of his disciples remarked, All must depart, all beings that have life must shed their compounded forms. Yes, even a master such as the Buddha, a peerless being, powerful in wisdom and enlightenment, must pass away. Apamadina sampadetha via dharma sankhara. Work diligently. Component things are impermanent. Mahaparinirvana Sutta.
After the Buddha. Does the Buddha exist after his death? The question, does the Buddha exist after his death or not, is not a new question. The same question was put to the Buddha during his lifetime. When a group of ascetics asked the same question to certain disciples of the Buddha, they could not get a satisfactory answer from them. Anuruddha, a disciple, approached the Buddha and reported to him about their conversation. Considering the understanding capacity of the questioners, the Buddha usually observed silence at such questions. However, in this instance, the Buddha explained to Anuruddha in the following manner. O Anuruddha, what do you think, is the form, rupa, permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, sir. Is that which is impermanent painful or pleasant? Painful, sir. Is it proper to regard that which is impermanent, painful, and subject to change as this is mine, this is I, this is my soul or permanent substance? It is not proper, sir. Is feeling permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, sir. Is that which is impermanent, painful, or pleasant? Painful, sir. Is it proper to regard that which is impermanent, painful and subject to change as this is mine, this is I, this is my soul? It is not proper, sir. Are perception, formative tendencies, and consciousness permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, sir. Is that which is impermanent, painful, or pleasant? Painful, sir. Is it proper to regard that which is impermanent, painful, and subject to change as this is mine, this is I, this is my soul? It is not proper, sir. Therefore whatever form, feeling, perception, formative tendencies, consciousness which have been, will be, and is now connected with oneself, or with others, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near. All forms, feelings, perceptions, formative tendencies, and consciousness should be considered by right knowledge in this way. This is not mine, this is not I, this is not my soul. Having seen thus, a noble, learned disciple becomes disenchanted with the form, feeling, perception, formative tendencies, and consciousness. Becoming disenchanted, he controls his passion and subsequently discards them. Being free from passion, he becomes emancipated and insight arises in him. I am emancipated. He realizes, birth is destroyed. I have lived the holy life and done what had to be done. There is no more birth for me. What do you think, Anuradha? Do you regard the form as a Tathagata? No, sir. O Anuradha, what is your view? Do you see a Tathagata in the form? No, sir. Do you see a Tathagata apart from form? No, sir. Do you see a Tathagata in feeling, perception, formative tendencies, and consciousness? No, sir. O Anuradha, what do you think? Do you regard that which is without form, feeling, perception, formative tendencies, and consciousness as a Tathagata? No, sir. Now, Anuradha, since a Tathagata is not to be found in this very life, because physical body is not Tathagata, is it proper for you to say, this noble and supreme one has pointed out and explained these four propositions. A Tathagata exists after death. A Tathagata does not exist after death. A Tathagata exists and yet does not exist after death. A Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death. No, sir. Well and good, Anuradha. Formerly and now also I expound and point out only the truth of suffering, and the cessation of suffering. Anuradha Sutta Samyutta Nikaya. The above dialogue between the Buddha and Anuradha may not be satisfactory to many, since it does not satisfy the inquiring mind of the people looking for answers from a materialist point of view. Absolute truth, the Dharma, is such that it does not give satisfaction to the emotion and intellect. Truth happens to be the most difficult thing for people to comprehend. It can only be fully comprehended by insight which transcends logic. Buddhahood is the embodiment of all the great virtues and supreme enlightenment. That is why Buddhas who could enlighten others are very rare in this world. A successor to the Buddha. Buddhahood is the highest of all achievements. Many people ask why the Buddha did not appoint a successor. But can anyone appoint another to take the place of the Supreme Enlightened One? Attaining Buddhahood is the highest of all achievements that only one who has gained supreme wisdom can reach. To attain this highest position, one must excel in every endeavor such as self-training, self-discipline, moral background, supreme knowledge, and extraordinary compassion towards every living being. Therefore, a person must make the effort to be prepared in order to attain Buddhahood. For example, a doctor cannot appoint even his own son as a doctor unless the son has qualified himself professionally. A lawyer cannot appoint another person as a lawyer unless that person obtains the necessary qualifications. A scientist cannot appoint another person as a scientist unless that person possesses the knowledge of a scientist. If he had done so, the successor, lacking the supreme qualities of Buddhahood, would have misused his authority or distorted the teaching. According to the Buddha, each individual must develop understanding and insight by him or herself by using the teachings as a guide, Pasako. A successor of the Buddha would only have created an organized religion or church with dogmas and commands and blind faith. We only have to study world history to see the kind of abuse that can take place when authority is placed in the hands of spiritually undeveloped persons. Therefore, the Buddha did not appoint a successor. Authority over a religion must be exercised by a person or persons possessing a clear mind, proper understanding, perfection, and leading a holy life. Authority should not be exercised by worldly-minded people who have become slaves to sensual pleasures or who crave for worldly material gain or power. Otherwise the sacredness and truth in a religion could be abused. The future Buddha. I am not the first Buddha to come upon this earth, nor shall I be the last. Previously, there were many Buddhas who appeared in this world. In due time, another Buddha will arise in this world, within this world cycle. When the Buddha was about to pass away, Venerable Ananda and many other disciples wept. The Buddha said, "Enough, Ananda. Do not allow yourself to be troubled. Do not weep. Have I not already told you that it is in the very nature of things that they must pass away? We must be separated from all that is near and dear to us." The foolish person conceives his idea of self. The wise man sees there is no ground on which to build the self. Thus the wise man has a right conception of the world. He will realize that all component things will be dissolved again, but the truth will always remain. The Buddha continued, "Why should I preserve this body when the body of the excellent law will endure? I am resolved. I have accomplished my purpose and have attended to the work set by me. Ananda, for a long time you have been very near to me in thoughts, words and acts of much love beyond all measure. You have done well, Ananda. Be earnest in effort and you too will soon be free from bondages. You will be free from sensuality, from delusion, and from ignorance." Suppressing his tears, Ananda said to the Buddha, "Who shall teach us when you are gone?" And the Buddha advised him to regard his teaching as the master. The Buddha continued again, "I am not the first Buddha to come upon earth, nor shall I be the last. In due time, another Buddha will arise in this world. A holy one, a supremely enlightened one, endowed with wisdom, in conduct auspicious, knowing the universe, an incomparable leader of men, a master of devas and men. He will reveal to you the same eternal truths which I have taught you. He will proclaim a religious life, holy, perfect and pure, such as I now proclaim." "How shall we know him?" asked Ananda. The Buddha replied, "He will be known as Maitreya, which means kindness or friendliness. Buddhists believe that those people who at present are doing meritorious deeds by leading a religious life will have a chance to be reborn as human beings in the time of Maitreya Buddha and will obtain nirvana identical with that of Gautama Buddha. In this way they will find salvation through the guidance of his teaching. His teaching will become a hope of the remote future for everybody. However, according to the Buddha, devout religious people can gain this nirvanic bliss at any time. if they really work for it irrespective of whether a Buddha appears or not. As long as my disciples lead a pure religious life, so long will the world never become empty of Ara and Tas. Mahaparinirvana Sutta.